So in a lot of games, if a player points their mouse at an object, like say in an MMO, you're in your inventory and you point at an object, a pop-up window will usually appear giving a description in place, or maybe in like the older RPGs, if you select an object, then maybe like at the bottom of the screen or at the top of the screen in an predefined area, a description will appear. We will look at how to do that today. So as you can see, this is an empty scene. All I've done is dragged and dropped the assets from an external folder into the asset area, and let's begin. So let's start by dropping our 4 really just random objects, and we're just going to slide them about so there is no overlap. And then we'll just move them up so they're not getting confused, so we're not getting confused with the camera icon. And now what we're going to do is with all of them selected, we're going to click on Add Component, we're going to click on Physics 2D, we're going to choose Box Collider. Now you can do this, it doesn't create one box around everything, it actually creates boxes around each individual one based on the shape of the, or should I say the borders of the actual image. So if you have, like as you can see with the crystal, if there's blank space, it still acknowledges that blank space as part of the image. So you could tweak these if you want. That's really not what we're worried about in this one. And also make sure you choose is trigger. These objects need to be triggers. We don't need them to be solid for the purposes of this, because again you're going to be like in your inventory screen, or maybe you're buying it from a shopkeeper, so you're not really worried about physical collisions. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, actually let's keep them selected. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our first script. We're going to do new script, and we'll just call this item text control. And we'll double click on that. And don't worry about the stuff that you see down here. It's because I'm using a Unity project folder that I do all my projects in, but none of this has any impact on what we're doing today. As usual, I typed out the script already, but I'll copy and paste it one line at a time. That way we don't miss anything. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create 2 variables. Public transform, so it's going to be an object. Pop-up text. So this is going to be the actual text object, which we have not created yet. The second thing, public static string text status equals off. You can use a bool if you want. Those have 2 settings, basically true or false. So effectively you can do the same thing. I just use strings. And it's static because I need to transfer this information to other objects. So this is telling us whether or not the text is on or off. Just save that. Let's see. So I'm going to delete these, but you can leave them in yours. You probably actually need them in yours, but just to get out of the way of what we're doing, because none of this is going to take place in the start or the update, at least for this script. So void on mouse enter. This is a predefined coroutine, so you need to make sure you write this out exactly right. Capital O, capital M, capital E, 2 parentheses at the end. Void on mouse enter. In fact, let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. So if the object that this script is attached to, if the mouse enters the object, and if you call this script is attached to the 4 objects, so if the mouse overlaps with any of the 4 objects, we're going to do a few things. First, we're going to check to see if this value is on or off, because we only want to turn the value on once. If you we'll jump ahead and then I'll explain why we need it. So if text status is set to off, so the text has not been turned on yet, here's the other object, pop-up text. So first we need to set get component text mesh dot text, and then this is going to be the description, which we're going to get into in a minute. So pop-up text dot get component text mesh dot text, we're setting the value for that. The text status needs to then be set to on, and then we need to instantiate this object. So instantiate pop-up text. Unfortunately, this is a little bit messy to look at. We want the window to appear in a certain location relative to what you're pointing at. So you want it to appear near the object, but maybe you don't want it to appear directly over it. Maybe you want it to appear below it. Maybe you want it to appear above it or to the left. So that's what is going on here. So whenever you instantiate something, there are 3 arguments. There is what's being instantiated, where it's being instantiated, and the object's rotation. In this case, instead of just saying pop-up dot location, or position rather, we want to give it an explicit location. So we're saying new vector 3, and we're going to actually state the 3 coordinates. Transform.position.x. So this is saying grab the x value of whatever object this is attached to. Transform.position.y plus 2. This is saying take the y position of the object this is attached to, but bump it up by 2 positions. So in other words, what this is doing is this is putting it above the object that you're pointing at. So like I said, you could put this below or not change it at all, and then once you see this get instantiated, then it'll make sense. And then pop-up text.rotation, use the default rotation for the object, don't mess around with it. Really, this is more for when you're using a 3D a virtual environment. That's where this really comes in handy. In a 2D game, you're almost always going to use the same rotation, but not necessarily. And we'll save that, and then just as we did a mouse enter, we need to do a mouse exit. So void on mouse exit, parentheses, again, capital O M E. Just as we check to see if the text is off, we check to see if the text is on. So if text status is set to on, set it to off, and then we actually don't need that, sorry. Sorry, I actually wrote this out last night. It must have been a little slippier than I thought. So basically this is saying if the mouse has exited, so you're pointing at the object, you move the mouse has exited. So if the mouse exits the object, set this, and this is set to on, which it gets set to on when you hover over, then set this back to off. And we'll see in a minute why you have to do that. So let's go ahead and create our actual text object. So get component, create empty. We can call this text pop-up. Now what this is going to have, add component, mesh, text mesh. This is where we're going to actually put in all the descriptions. This is going to be the actual pop-up text. So change character size to 0.15 or that thereabouts. For some reason the default value is too big and it'll just be really blurry. font size will be 18 for now. The actual font, choose Arial, that's the only one we've got installed here. And just to make sure this is working for text, we'll put in test. Slide that over all the way, we can see it is working. Now very often you don't have just text pop up. You're going to have like a window behind it, that way it's like blocking out the stuff behind it so it's easier to read. So that's what this object, it's not an object, it's an asset. That's what this asset here is for. So let's take, drag and drop it in there. Now that's probably a little bit too big. We can always tweak that a little bit. The way you change the size of an object, you can either change the scale, or if you click on the image itself, you can change pixels per unit. If you make this bigger, then the object becomes smaller. The reason why is it's a ratio. You can uncheck that, that way it can compress. We can change this so that compresses as well. As you can see, the object got smaller. Now if I had 20 of these, 20 tooltip windows, they all would have gotten smaller. So that's something to keep in mind. If you change the underlying image, the underlying asset, everywhere that's used will get smaller. Whereas if I had changed just this, only this one would have gotten smaller. So let's take our text and line it up. And we're just kind of eyeballing this. Let's see how that looks. Actually, what we need to do first, for sprite objects, they have this field, order and layer. Okay, so you don't even have to go into a script. You can say what order this should be in. Not so much for text. As you can see, there is nothing here that says order. If there's a way to do it here, just post it in the comments, but I'm not seeing any way to do it. Maybe they added that to version 5. I'm still using 4.6. So maybe there's a way to do it in 5, but currently there's no way to do it here. So it's an easy fix to do in a script, and since we have to attach the script anyways, it's really not that big of a deal. Alright, so we have our objects. They all have the ability to detect a mouse over. Okay. Let's go back to this. We said pop-up text get component text mesh.text. Now, if you notice, this is going to look kind of weird because we've got things like this in it, the /n. What that does is that's actually a line break. So you have the ability to actually do formatting within your text here. So what this says is pop-up text get component text mesh.text, change it to this, and just adjust based on the formatting. The problem is that means every single object is going to be set up like a bomb. So what we need to do is we need to adjust this so as that each object has its own description. What we're going to do is you look at the name of the object. So if name object dot name $= looks like I used T2S3 for the bomb, then do that. Even though it's only one line, we're still going to put in the brackets because there's going to be a bunch of these and we want to keep them separate. And the other one is scythe slash, and this is going to be different. I'm going to say scythe equipable weapon. So I'm just kind of randomly grabbing stats, but you get the idea that what you're saying is gives you it gives you a basic identifier, gives you information about it. Is it a consumable or is it equipable? And then some kind of damage stat. And now you're just doing this over and over again for each object. Potion. And the only reason why I'm actually mentioning base is because a lot of games there's a base amount, but depending on certain stats, it may increase how much damage it does. Like maybe you have a skill that increases the efficiency of potions of healing. So you're just telling them that, okay, this is what starts off with. It's actually going to change. You could actually even put variables in here. Maybe I'll do a separate tutorial for that. And so rather than saying 50 base damage or 50 base healing, it would say what the actual healing would be based on a certain variable. So you can actually embed variables in here too. And one more. So what you've done now is on mouse enter, when the mouse hovers over the object, make sure that the text is not turned on yet, and then based on the name of the object that's being hovered over, this is what the pop-up item is going to have its description, its text field changed to. So now we're really close. So we have, okay, so now what we're going to do is now we need to go to our tooltip object, our tooltip text mesh, and it needs a script. So add component, new script, and let's call this Hovertext. Create an ad, open it up, go to our text where we have this typed out already. So in the start section, this is what I was talking about bringing it to the top in the order. Get component text mesh dot renderer dot sorting order 10. Pretty self-explanatory. Change the sorting order to 10. The higher the number, it's on top of the pile. And then what we have in the update section is this. Now you'll see why we need the tooltip to be set. Well, the other reason why we need it set to be on and off. The first reason why we need that variable. Oops, sorry, I changed the name. It's not called tooltip. It's item text control. Okay, so the first reason why we needed this variable set to on or off is so it only creates the object once and doesn't spam it as long as you're pointing at it. The other reason why you need it to be set to on or off is so it can be communicated to be destroyed when you move the mouse. So, as I stated, this is a static variable. So this variable is available to any object anywhere in the game. But to do it, we have to identify where it is. So we're saying, okay, the script is item text control, and the actual variable is text status. So here's the name of the script. Here's the name of the variable. If that is set to off, then destroy the game object. And as I said, this is attached to the is attached to the pop-up text. So I think everything is in place now. So the window needs to be a child to the actual text mesh, and then drag and drop that into your asset area to turn into a prefab, because we said it's going to be instantiated. And now we need to actually attach it to the individual. I shouldn't say attach. We need to identify this variable as our prefab. So I think we're all set now. So when I point at this, mouse over, there's my pop-up window. It's a bomb, AoE consumable, 20 base damage. Now obviously we can see that the text is off, so we just simply need to tweak that. Move, it disappears. Point at the scythe. A scythe, equipable weapon, 50 base damage. Point at the gem, a crystal. So we can see it is working. We just have to tweak the positioning of a few things. So we can, when you click on your prefab object, okay, we can click on the window to adjust where it is, because, oops, sorry, I was clicking on the underlying image. Click on the little arrow next to your prefab, and it'll show you any objects that are a child of it. These numbers are relative to the parent, so this tells us how we need to adjust it. So let's run it one more time. It looks like the text needs, the window needs to come down and over a little bit. So we've got our window highlighted. We said it needs to come down a little bit. So let's make it 0.8 and over a little bit. Let's make this also 0.8. And you can see it did tweak it. So this is just this error trial. This point is just trial and error, so I don't want to spend too much time doing it. See, even closer, and now we can just shrink that text. So again, your prefab you can make changes to. This time we want to change the font size. Let's make that 16 and see how that looks. Excellent. So we point at the bomb. It says a bomb, AoE consumable, 20 base damage. Point at the scythe. Okay, so that's still a little bit too big. We might want to consider changing the size of the window itself. So like for instance, the window, I think we can change it here and maybe make this 110 and run it again. See, that helped. So now it's just a matter of tweaking the exact alignment, and like I said, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time doing that. It all depends what size of the window you use. It all depends how much information you want to provide, but you get the sense of how to do it. It's just a matter of moving the window relative to the text. And why am I doing that rather than the text itself? Because this is a child to the text object. So if I start moving the text object around, this will be moved too. So that's why you actually have to do it this way. So that's almost got it. Alright, so if there's any questions, let me know. I know that was a bit of a long one and I jumped around a bit, but that should do it.